In the quiet dark beyond the edge of the solar system, where sunlight faded into nothing and time seemed to slow, a signal began to whisper. It was not loud, it was not flashy, but it carried something that made every scientist who heard it go still. The signal came from a place no human ship had visited in over a century, a lonely stretch of space past the icy rocks of the Kuiper Belt, near the ghostly cloud of comets that marked the outer rim of Earth's reach. At the Geneva Astro Communications Hub, a young linguist named Daniel Brooks sat hunched over his console, sipping cold coffee and rubbing his tired eyes. He had been working the night shift for weeks, scanning old data logs for anything unusual. Most nights there was nothing. Just static, just noise. But tonight something changed. A repeating pattern flickered across his screen, faint, broken, but clearly not natural. It pulsed every 17 minutes like a heartbeat lost in the void. Daniel leaned forward, fingers flying across the keyboard. He ran decryption protocols, cross-referenced known alien dialects from past deep space probes, and even tried matching it against ancient Earth languages. To his shock, parts of it sounded like English. Not modern English, but something older, mixed with Mandarin and Spanish, twisted together with strange clicks and hums that didn't belong to any human tongue. He played the audio clip again. This time he heard it, the sound of a child sobbing. Then another voice, small and trembling, whispering, "Mom, please." Before the signal cut out, his hand shook. He called his supervisor, then the head of security, then the United Earth Defense Council. Within an hour, the entire hub was locked down. No one in or out. Every expert in astrophysics, cryptography, and xenolinguistics was summoned. They replayed the clip over and over. Each time, more voices emerged. Children, dozens of them, some crying, some chanting numbers, some screaming as if in pain. And beneath it all, a cold, mechanical voice barked orders in a language that chilled the room. The source was traced to a derelict vessel drifting near a massive alien structure orbiting a dead star. The ship's ID matched the Odyssey Dawn, a colony transport that had vanished in 2142 with over 200 souls aboard, mostly families, including 63 children. It had been listed as lost with all hands, but now it was sending signals. And those signals told a story no one wanted to believe. 3 days later, a small, black-hulled frigate named Aurora's Edge launched from Lunar Dock 7. On board was a covert recon team led by intelligence officer Lisa Morgan. She was sharp, quiet, and known for never flinching, even when staring down the barrel of the unknown. Her team included engineers, medics, and 2 ex-colony scouts who knew how to move in zero-G without making a sound. Their mission was simple: board the Odyssey Dawn, gather data, and get out without alerting whatever was nearby. The journey took 12 days. The alien megastructure grew larger in their viewports, a ring of jagged metal and pulsing lights wrapped around a blackened star. It looked ancient and hungry. When they finally reached the derelict ship, it hung like a ghost in the dark, its hull scarred and patched with strange alloys that didn't match any human design. The airlock was forced open from the outside, not the inside. That alone told Lisa something was wrong. Inside, the ship was cold. No power, no life signs. But the walls told a different story. Handprints, small ones, were smeared in dried blood along the corridor. Restraints hung from the ceiling in what used to be the children's quarters. Wires snaked from the floor into metal cuffs bolted to the walls. In the medical bay, they found skulls. Tiny human skulls, with thin metal filaments fused into the bone, trailing into ports in the floor. It looked like the children had been plugged in, used like machines. Daniel's voice crackled over the comms from Earth. "We've matched the neural patterns in the implants. They're not just for control, they're for processing. The Cathari, the empire that built that ring, they've been using human children as living computers. Their brains run warships, coordinate fleets, even predict enemy movements. The younger they are, the more adaptable their minds." Lisa's stomach turned. She moved deeper into the ship, her boots echoing in the silence. In the command center, she found logs, fragmented but readable. One entry, dated just weeks before the ship vanished, read, "They took the kids first. Said they were chosen. They smiled while they did it." Another said, "Harvest Protocol Alpha is active. All non-essential personnel to be recycled. Children under 12 to be prepped for neural integration." Then she saw it. A small data chip tucked into a child's stuffed bear, left on the captain's chair. She picked it up. Back on the Aurora's edge, they plugged it in. Video footage played. A little girl, no older than 7, sat in a white room, wires taped to her temples. A Cathari overseer, a tall, insect-like being with too many eyes, stood over her, speaking in that same mechanical tone from the signal. The girl's eyes were wide, unfocused. She was solving complex star charts in seconds. Her voice flat as she recited fleet positions across 3 star systems. Then she whispered, "Tell my dad I tried to be brave." Lisa shut it off. Her hands were clenched so tight her nails drew blood. She looked at her team. No one spoke. They didn't need to. They all knew what this meant. Earth hadn't just lost a ship. Humanity had been hunted. For generations, children had been stolen from the edges of human space, colonies, freighters, research outposts, and no one had connected the dots. Too few witnesses, too many cover-ups, too much fear. When the Aurora's Edge returned to Earth orbit, the footage was shown to the United Earth Defense Council in a sealed chamber beneath Geneva. The room was silent for a full minute after it ended. Then Admiral Paul Grant stood up. He was a man who had spent his life avoiding war, always choosing diplomacy over destruction, but now his voice was like stone. "We don't negotiate with slavers," he said. "We don't warn them. We find them. We break them, and we bring every child home." Across the planet, factories that once built solar harvesters and passenger shuttles began retooling overnight. Shipyards glowed with constant light. Recruiters stood in city squares, not asking for volunteers, but accepting them by the thousands. Parents who had lost children to space accidents now knew the truth. And they were ready. Earth had spent centuries trying to be peaceful, kind, and wise among the stars. But peace meant nothing if your children were being turned into tools for monsters. That night, humanity stopped asking for a seat at the galactic table. They were coming to burn it down, and they wouldn't hold back. The truth spread like fire. Within hours of the Aurora's Edge returning, every screen on Earth showed the same footage. The small girl in the white room, the wires on her head, the cold voice of the Cathari overseer. People didn't just watch. They wept, they shouted. They gathered in streets, in parks, in town squares, holding candles and photos of missing children from decades past, names once forgotten. Liam from Titan Station, Aisha from the Proxima Belt, twins Noah and Nora from the Ganymede refugee camp, were spoken again not as lost souls, but as stolen lives. The United Earth Defense Council met in emergency session. Old debates about budget cuts, peace treaties, and slow expansion vanished. In their place rose a single question: how fast can we fight back? Admiral Paul Grant stood before the council, his uniform crisp, his eyes tired but sharp. He laid out what they knew. The Cathari Dominion wasn't just one empire. It was a network of conquered worlds ruled by a caste that saw all other life as raw material. And for over 200 years, they had quietly raided the edges of human space, taking only children, because young minds were easier to shape, faster to link, and less likely to resist. Historians dug through dusty archives. What they found shocked even the skeptics. Reports of missing colony ships, vanished mining crews, entire outposts going silent with no distress call. All had one thing in common: they had children aboard. Before, these were blamed on solar flares, engine failures, or pirate raids. Now the pattern was clear. Earth had been under watch, not as a threat but as a farm. Grant didn't waste time on blame. He activated Project Iron Cradle, the emergency war plan no one thought they'd ever use. Every civilian shipyard from Rio to Jakarta shifted to military production. Passenger liners were stripped down and refitted with armor plating and rail cannons. AI cores once used for weather prediction were reprogrammed to run combat simulations. Even school workshops began printing drone parts. The world moved as one. At the new Detroit engineering complex, a quiet man named Carlos Ruiz worked 16-hour days. He wasn't a soldier. He was an engineer who used to design water purifiers for Mars colonies. But after seeing the footage of the little girl, he couldn't sleep. He studied the neural implant schematics recovered from the derelict ship. The Cathari used a frequency-based control signal, like a leash made of sound and electricity. If they could jam that signal, even for a few seconds, the children might break free. In a lab beneath the Rocky Mountain Research Base, Neuroscientist Maya Ellis tested his theories on brainwave simulators. She was soft-spoken, with kind eyes that now burned with quiet fury. She had lost a nephew 10 years ago, a boy who vanished during a school trip to a lunar observatory. His case was closed as accidental decompression. Now she knew better. Together, she and Carlos built a prototype neural disruptor, a small device that could flood a room with counter frequencies, scrambling the Cathari control link without harming the child's brain. They tested it on a recovered implant, hooked to a synthetic cortex. The first try failed. The second caused a feedback surge. The third time, the simulated child's voice whispered, "I can think again." Maya cried. Carlos hugged her. They had a weapon, not a bomb, not a gun, but hope. Back at UEDC headquarters, recruitment lines stretched for blocks. Men and women of all ages signed up, not for glory, but for justice. Retired pilots returned to flight simulators. Teachers trained as medics. Farmers learned to operate plasma cutters. There was no panic, only purpose. Earth hadn't felt this united since the last great climate wars, and even then it was out of fear. Now it was out of love, for the children taken and for the ones still at risk. Admiral Grant walked through the main hangar of Lunar Dock 1. Ships were being welded together faster than ever before. The new destroyers had no names yet, only numbers, but their crews already called them cradle ships after the project that birthed them. Grant stopped beside a young woman tightening bolts on a thruster array. She looked up, grease on her cheek, eyes bright. "Why are you here?" he asked. "My little brother disappeared from a freighter near Neptune," she said. "He was 8. They told us it was pirates. Now I know." She wiped her hands on her coveralls. "I'm not waiting for someone else to save him. I'm going to bring him home." Grant nodded. He didn't offer comfort. He didn't need to. Everyone knew the same truth. This wasn't a war for territory or resources. It was a rescue mission with guns. Meanwhile, deep in Earth's data vaults, analysts pieced together more from the Odyssey Dawn logs. The Cathari didn't just use children for navigation or targeting. Their minds were linked into a hive core, a central processor that turned hundreds of young brains into one superintelligence. That core directed entire fleets, predicted enemy movements, even managed planetary invasions. Without it, the Dominion would be blind, slow, vulnerable. But there was more. Buried in corrupted files was a star chart, hand-drawn, shaky but clear. It showed a system called Viridian Reach, marked with a symbol that looked like a broken chain. Next to it, a child's handwriting. "They keep us here. It hurts." Lisa Morgan, still recovering from the trauma of the derelict, volunteered to lead the first strike team. She knew the risks. Viridian Reach was deep in Cathari-controlled space. But if they could hit the processing hub, free even a few children and gather intel on the hive core, it might be the key to ending this forever. Admiral Grant approved the mission. The Aurora's Edge would go again, but this time it wouldn't be alone. 12 new destroyers, armed with pulse cannons and cloaking fields based on reverse-engineered Cathari tech, would escort it. Captain Elena Foster, a former cargo pilot with nerves of steel, would command the fleet. She had lost her niece in a colony accident 5 years ago. She didn't speak much about it. She just made sure every weapon on her ship was loaded and ready. As the fleet prepared to launch, Maya and Carlos delivered the first batch of neural disruptors, small handheld units, each one tested and blessed by Maya's careful hands. They were loaded onto every boarding pod, every medic's kit, every soldier's belt. On the day of departure, Earth held its breath. Not with fear, but with focus. In schools, children wrote letters to the ones they hoped to save. In factories, workers whispered, "Come home." In homes, parents hugged their kids a little tighter, knowing that soon, someone else's child might be safe because of what Earth was about to do. The fleet lifted off under a silent sky. No fanfare, no speeches. Just engines roaring and a promise carried in every heart. "We're coming for you." And this time, Earth wasn't asking. The fleet moved through the black like shadows. 12 destroyers and the Aurora's Edge at their center, cloaked in silence, engines throttled low to avoid detection. Viridian Reach lay ahead, a dim red star wrapped in a web of orbiting platforms all humming with strange energy. Captain Elena Foster watched from the command deck, her fingers resting lightly on the arm of her chair. She didn't speak much. She didn't need to. Everyone on board knew what was at stake. Scans showed the main processing hub was a massive ring-shaped station, its surface dotted with docking arms and shield emitters. Inside, according to the star chart drawn by the child, was where they kept them. Hundreds of them. Maybe more. Foster gave the order to hold position just outside sensor range. They waited, watched, listened. On the Aurora's edge, Lisa Morgan suited up with the strike team. Each wore light armor and carried neural disruptors on their belts. Young Kyle Dawson, the 9-year-old rescued from the derelict ship, stood near the airlock, quiet and pale. He wasn't supposed to be here, but he had begged to come. "I know the layout," he told Maya. "I remember the halls, the sounds, the pain." His eyes were too old for his face, but his voice was steady. They let him stay, on the bridge, not in the fight, but close enough to help if needed. The plan was simple. Use the disruptors to knock out the station's external sensors long enough for boarding pods to attach. Then move fast, find the children, and get out before the Cathari could react. No heroics, no delays, just in and out. At Oro 300 ship time, the fleet activated the disruptors. A low hum filled the comms, then silence. The station's outer lights flickered. Shields dropped for just 3 seconds, but that was all they needed. Boarding pods launched like silent arrows, slamming into the hull with magnetic clamps. Air hissed as inner doors blew. The team was inside. The corridors were cold and white, lit by pale blue strips on the ceiling. The air smelled like metal and something sour like fear. Lisa led the way, pulse rifle ready. They moved in pairs, clearing rooms, scanning for life signs. Most chambers were empty. Storage, maintenance. Then they turned a corner and froze. Ahead, a wide chamber glowed with soft green light. Rows of clear pods lined the walls, each holding a child. Wires snaked from their heads into the floor. Their eyes were open, but unseeing, breathing slow, alive but not really there. One boy twitched, whispering numbers under his breath. Another girl hummed a lullaby in broken Mandarin. Lisa's throat tightened. She signaled the medics forward. They worked fast, placing small disruptor pads on each pod's control panel. One by one, the green lights dimmed. One by one, the children's eyes blinked. Some cried, some screamed, some just stared, confused, as if waking from a nightmare that lasted years. Kyle's voice came over the comms, shaky but clear. "There's a core room. Down the hall. Left twice. It's big. It talks to all of us," Lisa nodded. "Stay on the bridge, Kyle. Just guide us." She left 2 medics with the freed children and took the rest of the team deeper into the station. The halls grew warmer. The walls pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. Then they saw it, a massive chamber with a dome of glass at its center. Inside floated a swirling mass of light and wire, connected to hundreds of thin cables that vanished into the floor. The hive core, and standing before it, watching them with too many eyes, was a Cathari overseer. Tall, armored, its limbs jointed like a spider's. It didn't speak. It just raised a clawed hand. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Doors slammed shut behind them. They were trapped. Lisa didn't hesitate. "Jam it now." The engineer slapped a disruptor onto the nearest console. The core flickered. The overseer staggered as if in pain. For a moment, the link was broken. In that moment, Kyle's voice burst through the comms, louder than before. "It's scared. It thinks we'll break it." The core controls the whole sector. Ships, weapons, everything. "If it dies, they go blind." Lisa understood. They couldn't just free the children. They had to destroy the core. But doing so might trigger a self-destruct. She looked at her team. They all nodded. No words needed. They planted charges around the chamber. Small, focused explosives designed to melt the core's housing without blowing the whole station. As they worked, the overseer recovered, screeching in its sharp, clicking language. It lunged. One soldier fell, his armor torn open. Lisa fired, hitting the creature in the chest. It stumbled, but didn't stop. Then Kyle's voice came again, calm this time. "I'm in. I can talk to it." "What?" Lisa whispered. "I was linked before. I remember the path. Let me try." Before anyone could stop him, Kyle had patched into the station's comm system from the Aurora's edge. His small voice echoed through the core chamber, speaking in the Cathari tongue. Not with fear, but with command. The overseer froze. The core pulsed slower. For a few precious seconds, the system believed Kyle was still one of its own. "Run," Kyle said. Lisa grabbed the wounded soldier and ran. The team sprinted back through the halls, dragging the injured, shouting for the medics to evacuate. Pods launched from the station's hull, racing back to the fleet. Just as the last one cleared, the core chamber exploded, not with fire, but with a silent burst of light that rippled through the station like a wave. The hive core was gone. On the bridge of the Aurora's edge, Kyle slumped in his seat, tears streaming down his face. He held a small data crystal he'd pulled from the core's backup port during his brief connection. It held star maps, fleet logs, and one clear set of coordinates. Xylos Prime, the Cathari homeworld. Back on the destroyers, medics tended to the rescued children. Some were too weak to speak. Others clung to strangers, whispering names of parents they hadn't seen in years. One little girl held Maya's hand and said, "You came." Maya kissed her forehead and whispered, "We'll never leave you again." Captain Foster ordered the fleet to retreat. They had what they came for, more than they hoped for. Not just children, hope, and a target. As they jumped to warp, leaving the burning station behind, Lisa sat beside Kyle. He was quiet, staring out the viewport. "Did it hurt?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Every day, but not anymore." She put a hand on his shoulder. "You saved them, Kyle." He shook his head. "We all did." Far away on Earth, the news came through. Children rescued. Hive core destroyed. The first real blow struck against the Cathari Dominion. People didn't cheer. They cried. They hugged their own kids tighter. They lit candles in windows, not for mourning, but for welcome. The war wasn't over, but for the first time it felt winnable. Because now Earth had more than weapons. It had voices. And those voices would not be silenced again. Earth did not wait. The moment the fleet returned with the rescued children and Kyle's data crystal, the shipyards doubled their pace. New warships rolled out every day, bigger, faster, armed with weapons built from stolen Cathari designs and human grit. The dreadnought Liberty's Hammer was launched in just 6 weeks, its hull forged from asteroid mined steel, and its heart powered by a fusion core that could light a city for a year. Admiral Paul Grant stood on the observation deck as it left dry dock, his face unreadable but his hands clenched tight. This was no longer about rescue. It was about ending it. The Cathari, stunned by the loss of the Viridian Reach hive core, reacted with fury. They sent a message, not through words, but through action. A planet cracker warhead, a weapon designed to split worlds apart, was detected moving toward Mars. Its target, the main water reclamation hub, home to over 2 million people, half of them children. The message was clear. Hurt us and we will erase your future, but Earth had changed. They were not the same people who once whispered about peace while their young vanished in the dark. Now they answered with fire. The Liberty's Hammer, flanked by over 300 warships, moved to intercept. Captain Elena Foster led the vanguard, her eyes fixed on the incoming threat. Pilot squadrons launched from carrier decks, small fast fighters painted with symbols of broken chains. Among them flew Marcus Lee, a former delivery pilot from Luna who had lost his younger sister to a colony transport failure 10 years ago. He didn't fly for glory. He flew so no other brother would feel that loss. Zoe Ramirez, once a robotics engineer in Chicago, now manned the main cannon on the Iron Promise, one of the new destroyers. She had helped design the pulse cannons that now lined Earth's fleet. As the Cathari Armada appeared near the Helios Gate, a wormhole nexus that controlled access to half the galaxy, she locked onto the lead warship and fired. The blast tore through shields like paper. The enemy ship cracked open and drifted, dead in space. The Battle of Shattered Suns began not with a declaration but with silence. Then chaos. Cathari ships, sleek and black, poured through the gate in waves, their weapons spitting plasma that melted steel in seconds. But Earth's fleet fought differently. They didn't hold lines. They didn't wait for orders. They moved like a storm, fast, unpredictable, angry. Marcus's squadron dove through enemy fire, targeting shield emitters with pinpoint strikes. They'd learned from Kyle's memories. Cathari shields ran on harmonic frequencies. If you hit the right spot at the right time, the whole system collapsed. One by one, the great warships flickered and died. On the ground in hidden labs, Maya and Carlos worked non-stop. They'd refined the neural disruptor into a ship-wide pulse emitter. When activated, it didn't just free children. It scrambled Cathari command signals, turning their own drones against them. During the battle, the Liberty's Hammer unleashed the first full-scale pulse. Across the battlefield, Cathari fighters veered off course, colliding with their own fleet. Confusion spread like a virus. Lisa Morgan, now promoted to tactical command, coordinated the chaos from the bridge of the Aurora's edge. She watched as Marcus's fighter took heavy damage but still rammed a crippled Cathari cruiser, blowing its engine core. She saw Zoe's cannon blast open a path for rescue shuttles to retrieve downed pilots. She saw Earth not as a planet but as a single heartbeat. Then came the turning point. Deep in the Cathari formation, a massive command vessel hovered, the Sovereign Maw, flagship of the Dominion's outer fleet. It carried the mind link of a high overseer, one who had personally ordered the harvesting of human children for decades. Kyle, now stronger but still quiet, sat beside Lisa on the bridge. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I can feel him. He's afraid." Lisa didn't hesitate. "Give me a path." Kyle guided them through the Cathari network, using the fragments of memory still echoing in his mind. The Liberty's hammer broke formation, charging straight for the Sovereign Maw. Cathari ships swarmed it, firing everything they had. Shields failed. Hull plates buckled. But the dreadnought kept coming. Inside the Cathari flagship, the Overseer screamed as Kyle's mind brushed against his own, not to control, but to show him. Show him the faces of the children, show him the mothers who wept. Show him Earth's rage not as violence, but as love turned to steel. For a moment, the Overseer faltered. That was all Earth needed. The Liberty's hammer fired its main cannon point blank. The Sovereign Maw exploded in a silent bloom of fire and metal. The Cathari fleet, suddenly leaderless and blinded by the neural pulse, broke ranks. Some fled. Some fought to the last. None survived. When the battle ended, debris floated where stars once shone. Earth had lost ships. Good people. But they had won the Helios Gate. And more importantly, they had proven something to the galaxy. Humanity was not prey. Back on Earth, the rescued children began to heal. Some spoke. Some drew pictures of the places they'd been held. Their memories, shared gently with Maya and Carlos, revealed more than tactics. They revealed weakness. The Cathari weren't gods. They were bullies. And like all bullies, they ruled through fear because they were afraid themselves. Kyle sat with Admiral Grant one evening in the quiet garden of the Geneva Command Center. The boy looked up at the sky where new stars seemed to burn brighter. "They used to tell us Earth was gone," Kyle said, "that no one was coming." Grant knelt beside him. "We were slow, but we came," Kyle nodded. "Now they know we don't stop." Grant stood, looking toward the shipyards where the final fleet was being armed. "No," he said. "They'll know we never stop." The path to Xylos Prime was clear. The Cathari homeworld waited. And Earth was coming, not for war, but for justice. Not for revenge, but for every child who whispered in the dark, hoping someone would hear. And this time the whole galaxy would hear them too. The final fleet gathered beyond the edge of known space, a sea of steel and fire stretching farther than the eye could see. Over 500 ships, from the mighty Liberty's hammer to small scout vessels painted with the names of missing children, waited in silence. Earth held its breath, not in fear but in focus. This was the end of the road. Xylos Prime, the heart of the Cathari Dominion, hung in the distance, a dark world wrapped in towers of black metal and pulsing veins of light. Admiral Paul Grant stood on the command deck, his hands behind his back. He didn't give a speech. He didn't need to. Every soul aboard every ship knew why they were here. They weren't here to conquer. They were here to free. Using the codes Kyle had pulled from the hive core, the fleet slipped past the outer defenses like ghosts. The Cathari never saw them coming. Their sensors were blind, their network still reeling from the loss at Helios Gate. Earth's ships dropped out of warp just above the planet's atmosphere. Engines silent, weapons hot. Colonel Nate Briggs led the ground assault. A quiet man with a scar across his cheek and a photo of his daughter in his pocket. She'd vanished during a school trip to Europa 10 years ago. He stepped onto the surface of Xylos Prime with 100 elite soldiers behind him. Their target, the Grand Nurseries, vast underground complexes where children from dozens of species were kept in neural stasis, their minds still feeding the Dominion's war machine. The city above was empty. No civilians, no markets, just machines and overseers. The Cathari didn't live like humans. They built, they controlled, they consumed, but they did not nurture. That made their weakness clear. They had no heart to defend. Briggs's team moved fast. They breached the main entrance with shaped charges, then poured into the tunnels below. The air was cold and smelled of ozone and something sour, like old fear. Hallways stretched in every direction, lined with pods glowing faint green. Inside each, a child floated in fluid, wires trailing from their skull into the walls. Human, alien, young, old. All used, all silenced. Medics followed close behind, placing neural disruptors on every pod they passed. One by one, the lights dimmed. One by one, the children woke. Some cried. Some reached out with trembling hands. A small boy with silver eyes, clearly not human, whispered in a language no one understood, but his tears were the same. Up in orbit, Admiral Grant faced the final choice. Intelligence showed the High Overseer waited in the central spire, deep beneath the planet's surface. He was the one who had signed the first harvest order centuries ago. He believed humanity would break, would beg, would become like them once they tasted power. Grant boarded a shuttle with Lisa Morgan and Kyle. They landed in the heart of the spire, weapons ready but not raised. The chamber was vast, lit by a single beam of red light from above. The High Overseer stood tall, armored in black chitin, his many eyes fixed on them. "You come to kill me," he said, his voice like grinding stone. "No," Grant replied. "We come to end you," the Overseer laughed. "You think destroying me will stop the cycle? We were once slaves too. This is how the galaxy works. The strong use the weak. You will do the same when you rule." Grant stepped forward. "We remember what it means to be human." That's the difference. He didn't draw a gun. He didn't order an attack. Instead, he nodded to Kyle. The boy walked forward, small but steady. He looked up at the Overseer and spoke in the Cathari tongue, not with hate but with sorrow. "You hurt us because you were hurt. But it stops now." The Overseer hesitated. For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. Then Grant gave the order. Not to fire, but to activate the Liberty's Hammer's core overload. Not to destroy the planet, but to send a pulse through the entire Cathari neural network. A pulse of freedom. Deep in the ship's heart, the reactor flared. A wave of energy shot through the planet, through every wire, every implant, every link, across Xylos Prime, in every nursery, every warship, every command post. The control signals died. Minds snapped free. The Dominion's hive mind shattered like glass. The High Overseer screamed as the voices in his head, the voices of thousands of children, vanished. He fell to his knees, not from pain, but from silence. The silence of being alone. Grant turned and walked away. He didn't look back. Above, the fleet began rescue operations in full. Shuttles carried children to safety. Medics worked around the clock. Maya and Carlos moved from pod to pod, holding hands, whispering, "You're safe now." Days later, as the last child was lifted from the planet, Earth broadcast a message to every known system. It was simple. No threats, no demands, just words. All children are free. No more chains. From a dozen liberated worlds, species long silenced sent their thanks. Some joined Earth's new alliance. Others simply went home. But all knew one truth: humanity had not come to rule. They had come to protect. Back on Earth in Geneva's Peace Garden, Kyle stood beside a freshly turned patch of soil. In his hands was a small sapling, its leaves bright green against the gray sky. He knelt and planted it gently, patting the dirt with small hands. People gathered around, not to cheer but to remember. Parents held their children close. Veterans stood in silence. Admiral Grant watched from a distance, his face tired but calm. Earth had not held back. And because of that, the galaxy would never be the same. Kyle looked up at the sky, where stars no longer seemed so far away. He smiled just a little. For the first time in his life, he felt safe. And he knew he was home.